So let's go ahead and get started. We're just on time. Hello, everybody. Welcome to day 2 of the Play Every Day virtual symposium organized by the Education Alliance. My name is Leah Maxson. I am a senior inclusive education advisor at the U.S. Agency for International Development. I'm based in Washington, D.C. in the U.S. And I'm really excited to welcome you all to this session today on games and play for inclusive education. We have an excellent lineup of presentations for you. Before I introduce our presenters, let me just go over a few housekeeping items. First, we have an hour and 15 minutes for this session. Each of our presenters will give about a 7-minute presentation. After all of the presentations, we will then move into a roundtable discussion and open it up for questions and comments from the audience. I want to encourage you to please post your questions at any time in the chat box. You can find the chat box on the right-hand side of your screen. We will collect your questions so that they can be addressed during the roundtable portion. You will also have a chance to ask your question directly via audio or video if you prefer, and I'll let you know how to do that later. I would also like to point out another function in this platform that allows you to enlarge any of the presenters' boxes on your screen by double-clicking the box that you want to enlarge. And so you can enlarge the ASL interpreter's box if you'd like, or any of the presenters' boxes if you'd like. I'd also like to introduce you to Michael, who is our session technician. He will be helping us with any technical issues that might arise throughout our time together today. So that is all for the housekeeping. If I can also ask those who are on screen to please mute yourselves. That'll help the audio come through a little more clearly right now. Thank you so much. So great. As I mentioned, this session is about games and play for inclusive education. And we have really an excellent lineup of presentations for you today. Our presenters all bring a breadth and depth of knowledge and experience in working with learners with disabilities in varying contexts. Games and play is at the heart of their work, be it games to promote literacy and learning among students with reading difficulties, games to strengthen family bonds among parents and children with disabilities, games to increase access to language and literacy for deaf communities, or games to teach coding to children using accessible coding kits. Now more than ever, we need games and play that are accessible to all children and foster inclusive quality education for all. We need innovative ways to engage learners at home and support families and caregivers who are juggling immense responsibilities. We need ways to support teachers in effectively reaching and teaching children with disabilities. I hope today's presentations will inspire creativity for what is possible in realizing the promise for education for all. And so with that, let us get started. Let me introduce our first presenter, Jesper, who is the co-founder of GraphoGame. GraphoGame is a mobile phone learning game for children with learning difficulties. It started as a quest for understanding reading processes in dyslexia in the Finnish context and evolved into a global effort to provide support for early childhood literacy acquisition in 13 local languages. I am pleased to introduce one of GraphoGame's co-founders, Jesper Ryynänen, and he may correct the pronunciation of his last name for me, I apologize. And Jesper will now share more about GraphoGame with us. So Jesper, over to you.
Thank you so much, Leah. And yeah, it's a very difficult surname, so don't beat yourself up about it. I am from Finland, so I apologize for our names that we have in the education industry. You often see our names, and they're all horrible to pronounce. So don't worry about it. But I'll just share my screen and get started. And I have 6 minutes. So if I rush too fast, I apologize to all. If there's anything you miss, I'll try my best to be as legible as possible. So let's see, just share my screen. Can everyone say that you can see this just fine?
Jesper, and a reminder to everyone, you can click twice to maximize Jesper's video here so that you can see it enlarged.
Yeah, great. So I'll just get started. So GraphoGame is an early literacy application for Android, iOS, and Windows devices in multiple different languages. And every single language version that has ever been created has been created with researchers in the fields of linguistics and neuropsychology. So, as I said, GraphoGame is an evidence-based app in the sense that it's actually based on multiple randomized control trials and peer-reviewed articles about how to best teach the fundamentals of reading in several languages. In the context of English, for example, just to put it in context, we're dealing with phonics and decoding. And what this really is, it's the child's ability to recognize a set of letters and be able to know exactly how to pronounce it with confidence. And this is in several research papers, it's been shown that phonics has been shown to be one of those areas that if just children, especially with dyslexia, are strong in their phonics abilities when they enter first grade around 7 years old or so, they have a much greater chance at not only enjoying school, but also succeeding in literacy. So GraphoGame is really unique in the sense that it is based on neuroscience. It's not just an educational tool, from practice alone, but it has been researched in almost medical science sort of conditions, as you can see from the picture right there. It works completely offline. Once you have it on your phone or tablet, you don't need to have an active connection. There's no subscriptions or anything like that. So it's very effective in contexts that don't have internet connections. It was originally created to support children with dyslexia and reading difficulties, but in doing so, we realized that we were actually just taking a very small segment of the learning population and then differentiating them too much. So this was then made inclusive to all, I exaggerate when I say all learners, but dyslexic children as well as children who are very talented in literacy learning. So I mentioned being evidence-based. There's about 300 publications, peer-reviewed journal articles, etc., that mention GraphoGame as a methodology, or it's in the research design itself. And then also we have about 17 PhD or master's level thesis papers that have been published around the world about GraphoGame specifically, and multiple randomized controlled trials. Just to give you an example of how we do these randomized controlled trials, with our English version of GraphoGame, our British English version specifically, which was researched by neuroscientists in the University of Cambridge Center for Neuroscience in Education, they set up a study with 400 children, so 200 children using GraphoGame and a control group of 200 children just being taught by teachers in small group literacy activities. It found that children were actually learning with GraphoGame at the same speed as the children that were being taught by teachers. And this is exactly what we want to prove in this research. We don't want to say that we're better than teachers or we can do it better than the syllabus. We want to say that we can prove that we can keep up with a teacher, and that when you at home, if you're locked down due to coronavirus, as a parent, you can rest assured that the content your child is consuming is based on actual research. And we even found in one of our India studies with children who didn't even have English as a first language, that their letter sound knowledge in a 1-month intervention improved by 30%, and word recognition went up by 20%. So very large effect sizes. And Cambridge University summarized this on their page perfectly. This is what our philosophy as a company and as a game is as well. The app GraphoGame has been shown to be as effective as one-to-one teacher support, but any number of children can be playing at the same time. Of course, they're exaggerating a little bit there to get some dramatic effect, but that is the core of what we're trying to achieve here. Is that we want to replicate the effectiveness of a teacher, but be able to scale that to as many devices around the world as possible. So just to go back to coronavirus a little bit more, we talk about the COVID slide in literacy. During the summer holidays, children, when they learn certain tasks, they often forget them when they come back, or they're weaker in several skills when they come back from their summer holidays. Well, it's expected, and it's already happening. This will be affecting over 55 million children around the world, where coronavirus and the restrictions surrounding that will likely cause even further slides in literacy on top of the summer holidays that lots of children around the world just had. So this is what GraphoGame really is designed to do, is that you can play it at home, wherever you are, with minimal supervision from teachers or parents, and the child can learn at their own time the most important content they will likely ever learn when it comes to literacy, which is their ability to connect letters and the sounds and be able to blend them together into their first words. So just to summarize, because I'm actually coming up perfectly at 6 minutes, we have UK English, US English, Dutch, Norwegian, French, Chinese pinyin, so that's Romanized Chinese, Spanish, and a Finnish version. And we have several other African languages such as Swahili, Chinyanja, which is spoken in Zambia, and we have Portuguese coming, Brazilian and European. So yeah, if you want to know more about our language versions, just contact me. I'd be happy to talk about it. But I'll leave it to Michael to put our little trailer so you see the game in action a little bit more. Thank you very much.
All right, great. Thank you so much. And now I'll share the trailer.
This is Catherine, the interpreter. May I ask who is responsible for giving permission to share video? The second interpreter, Jenica, is trying to come on screen.
Okay, so right after I'm done screen sharing, I could go back and give her screen share access.
Michael, I actually can see my video right now. Thank you.
Okay, no problem.
And while we're waiting for the video to play, Jesper, thank you so much for that presentation. It was really great, really interesting, and looking forward to learning more about GraphoGame. I encourage everybody who's joined us today to please feel free, if you have questions for Jesper about GraphoGame, feel free to post those in the chat box, and we'll keep a record so that during the roundtable portion of this session, we can make sure that your questions are addressed.
Yeah, I'm just going to stop screen sharing for just 1 minute.
Jesper, while we're waiting for the video to pop up, could you tell us you mentioned that GraphoGame is available in some African languages. Can you tell us some of the countries in Africa where your application is being used?
So I think in terms of use, we're most popular in Kenya, but it's actually for our English version. Even though we have a Swahili version, Kenyan students seem to want to consume the English phonics game more, but we do have Swahili that was actually researched in Tanzania. And then we have our Chinyanja version, which is a language spoken in Botswana and Zambia, if I remember correctly, a Bantu language. And we're setting up a research project to sort of prove its effectiveness in rural contexts. So we haven't gone very far in terms of distribution yet in Africa, but that's one reason why I'm here, to hopefully meet people who can help us get more exposure in those markets.
All right, perfect. Thank you for that, Jesper. And now video should be ready to show. So I'm going to share my screen one more time. All right, can everybody see that?
Everyone?
Thing. Sing. Wet.
Right, well, I think that's that, but I'll just finish off by saying thank you for everyone, and thank you for the questions, and yeah, I look forward to the panel discussion.
Thank you so much, Jesper. And also, let me just pop this link into the chat box. Jesper's video and all of our presenters' videos are available in the link that I just shared in the chat box. So we encourage everyone to take a look and explore further after this session, if you'd like. So let's go ahead and move on to our second presentation. I'm really happy to welcome our team of colleagues from World Vision. We have Edward, Alisa, and Brisida, who will be presenting their work with families of children with disabilities in remote and rural areas of Albania during the COVID-19 pandemic right now, as well as the aftermath of the recent earthquake. The team will be talking with us about how they are supporting families to care for their children and support theirs and their children's well-being during this difficult time. So now I'd like to turn it over to the World Vision team to begin your presentation. Over to you. And I believe, Brisida, you will be the one leading the presentation for World Vision. Are you able to hear me?
Yes, I'm here. Hello, everyone. I'm waiting for my colleague Alisa, if she can share the screen of the presentation.
And I don't see Alisa on the screen right now. Alisa, if you...
And okay. I can start. Is there a way that I can share it from my laptop?
There is. If you look the bottom section of your screen, you'll see a computer screen icon.
Mm-hmm.
And if you click that icon,
Yeah.
that should allow you to
Okay.
share your screen.
Okay. Sorry, guys.
No, that's perfectly okay.
Okay. Gosh, I'm so sorry.
No, that's okay. Brisida, you know what we can do? We'll go ahead and move on to the next presentation and we'll come back to you. Is that okay?
Oh, yes. Okay, as we try to connect. Thank you.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you, everybody, for your patience. So let us move on to our team of colleagues from the Rochester Institute of Technology, RIT, and the National Technical Institute for the Deaf, NTID, based here in the United States. So we have Professors Stephen Jacobs and Chris Kurz, who will be joining us today. The team from RIT and NTID will present their work in supporting international deaf communities to develop literacy and access information before and during COVID-19. They will introduce us to their World Around Us platform and its role in fostering inclusive education for deaf learners. So Stephen and Chris, over to you.
Hi folks, I'm Stephen. I'll be handling the first piece of this, and then Chris will probably be the lead on Q&A. Chris leads education, and I'm a professor of game developer, and I run our Center for Open Source and Open Work. And we'll give you a brief intro to this. So World Around You is an open source read and play application for deaf literacy. We were funded by our good friends at All Children Reading. They had grand challenges called Sign On for Literacy, which was to produce applications to support deaf education and deaf literacy, and then the Begin With Books follow-on for that to allow us to create more content for it. We worked with a development partner, Second Avenue Learning, which is a woman-owned educational games and software studio out of Rochester, New York. And World Around You provides a library of multilingual in both text and sign language early reading storybooks for an international audience. Sign languages are different around the world. They're different within different countries. For example, where we piloted the program and got our first books created, we did a residency in the Philippines, where we worked with students to train them on the platform, demo the platform, and then have them create 20 books, I believe, though Chris will correct me if it's needed, in different languages, not just in English and Tagalog, but within Indonesia, as within India, within the Philippines, as within India, there are many different sign languages, just as there are many spoken dialects. So here you see a page of a storybook, and you'll notice down below here, we've got the textural language, and we've got the choices for the textural language the book can be displayed in. And then on our next screen, you can see that we also have a choice of multiple sign languages for this particular text. This is a web-based platform, so people get a subscription, and free subscription, they get an account essentially. And they're then able to log in and create these books online. They upload the images, they upload the videos, they upload the text, and then they stitch them together on the platform itself. So this is an example of what the build pages interface looks like. So you're able to upload a page, add the signed video clip, and then add the text. And you can do things like adding the text in real time if you want to. You don't have to upload a text file to begin with. You can just assemble and edit right on screen. One of the pieces of the application is to create a glossary page so that within the text boxes of the storybook, there'll be grayed out, not grayed out, but gray ovaled words in which a reader can click and display an image, a textual definition, and by editing the video that they've uploaded in the platform on the web, they can go ahead and pull out the clip of the single word or concept that they're defining within that glossary. So you'll see here there's a video window down at the bottom where they're able to use sliders to isolate the piece of video that they want, and where they're able to add the text that describes it and add an image that represents it. Games are built in the platform through a template system, and they're based on the glossary. So once you have your glossary, you can go ahead and build just by dragging and dropping these templated games. So we have one where the people pick the sign to complete the sentence, right? So we have 3 choices here, and the player just drags and drops the clip in there to complete the sentence. We also have another kind of matching concentration style game. And because we've started work in the Philippines, these are designed on the jeepneys that are all over the Philippines. And so there are windows with the video clip and windows with the textural word displayed, and you have to match the text to the sign by clicking on them both, and then you'll get stars that pop up to demonstrate that you've actually made the right match, or a negative mark that shows. An important thing to understand about the work we've done is that it's not just a storybook library. Because it's an open source, multilingual, international, rapid publishing platform for the deaf, it can be used for a lot of different purposes. So 2 of the things that we're looking to do with it in the future, one is to create a version of the platform that's aimed more at high school and college level education, and that can also allow instructors and researchers to go ahead and share their research in multiple sign languages with multiple text versions on the screen. And then we'd also like to use it as the basis for, in its first step, an international COVID-19 information distribution website. This was kind of inspired by the fact that we saw, once the pandemic broke out, on different social networks where we have deaf friends in the Philippines and Europe and South America, you would see people trying to share within their friends networks information on the virus. So being able to centralize that stuff with input from the local regions would be great. And then we'd like to be able to use that to expand out and create an international disaster and emergency information website that can be addressing local and regional and statewide national challenges. And that's my 7 minutes. Look forward to hearing your questions.
Stephen, thank you so much. I just wanted to ask Chris if there was anything that you wanted to add to the presentation.
Yes, I just want to add this is a wonderful project, and we've been able to network with so many different deaf communities all over the world. And we are continuing to build stories in our program and work with other international sign languages. And it's just one reason sign language people assume is universal, but it is not. It is very distinct and regionally dependent. We are looking forward to finding similarities between languages and improving our research there. It's also, just as Stephen mentioned, we are continuing to do more study and find more opportunities to provide information and education related to health and many other topics in different places all over the world. Again, it's important that people see their national sign language used in educational platforms. So those are some of our biggest goals.
Thank you so much. And Stephen put a note here for you, Chris, in the chat box, saying that you can probably list the countries that you are working in with G and A.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, now we are working, using the program in multiple different countries, working with a program named All Children Read. So we're working with that program primarily in the Philippines. We're working with people in Honduras right now, Papua New Guinea, as well as Fiji and Samoa, as well as Somalia. And so again, just as Stephen opened with, we are hoping to provide access and to build the educational sign language community all over the world.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. You mentioned the All Children Reading Grand Challenge for Development, and I also saw Tony Bloom, who's with us today, also mentioned that. I would be remiss to not also touch on the All Children Reading Grand Challenge for Development, which is a grand challenge that is being supported by USAID, World Vision, who we have here with us today, and the Australian government. And this challenge seeks to promote literacy and developing literacy for young children using technology. It's also something that our dear friend and colleague, Tony Bloom, is really the godfather of, I would say. He directed this program for USAID. And so we're grateful for all of the work that this program has been able to do to support early grade literacy development, particularly for children with disabilities. And we've had the pleasure of really being able to work with many of you too who are here with us today, including our colleagues from the Rochester Institute of Technology and National Technical Institute for the Deaf. So thank you very much for that. I see some really great questions that are coming into the chat box. Thank you. Questions coming. We're going to get to those questions during the roundtable portion at the end. But let us go ahead and move on to our next presentation, and we'll see if our colleagues from World Vision are ready to go. So Alisa, if I can ask, and Brisida, for the two of you to go ahead and start your presentation.
Yes, I have clicked on that share button and I'm trying to see if I can, oh, I think it'll let me. Are you seeing anything?
Yep, it's there. And just a reminder to everyone, you can
Okay, thank you, Alisa.
You can click twice on that on their presentation, and it will enlarge on your screen so that you can see it a little better. But Alisa and Brisida, over to you.
Yes, thank you. So hello everyone, my name is Brisida Jahaj and I'm the Education and Youth Technical Advisor for World Vision Albania and Kosovo. So I'm here to present together my colleagues today. This opportunity, we see it as a great opportunity in order to ensure e-learning for equity and well-being for caregivers and children with disabilities in Albania. So during this last period of time, Albania has been hit by two disasters. Actually, last November, we were hit by earthquake, and afterwards, as we already know, we are all facing the challenges of the pandemic. So our inclusive education program has a lot of focus in working with children with disabilities based on principles of inclusion and focusing on elements of universal design while we build our products as well as our interventions. So during this period of time, we've been conducting also two assessments in order to see what were the real consequences for parents and children with disabilities in Albania after the earthquake and after the and during the COVID pandemic. And 35% of these parents declare that they are experiencing high levels of stress. Only 5 in 10 children with disabilities have had any kind of remote support during the pandemic time, while 55% of caregivers, despite the challenging economic situation in Albania, see technology as a means to support more their children and their learning process. And
go back, sorry.
Okay, so yeah, in the meantime, Alisa can go on with the slides and I'll use my slide in order to continue faster. So during this period of time also, in partnership with the Albanian Deaf Association, people with hearing impairment, we have been developing a series of 30 daily podcasts focusing on resilience and mental health. If Alisa is sharing the screen now, you could see some of the a photo from that moment where we reached an audience of more of 180,000 people, including the deaf community in Albania, because as you could visually see the Albanian Sign Language interpretation. But the other project that we are really proud of that I want to highlight in my presentation today is the Stay-at-Home Family Challenge. Here we engage 28 parenting groups through simple channels as WhatsApps. And then we, by engaging also nearly 782 participants. Among these people in Albania, we have a lot of families with disabilities. But this approach, this curricula design, focusing on the Stay-at-Home Family Challenge, we want to see it accessible for parents who have children with disabilities at homes. And in order to give you a little bit of a taste, I don't know if Alisa can help me now. In my slide presentation, there is a 20-second sequence of a video from this Stay-at-Home Family Challenge, which is a fully developed curricula, which helped engage parents with children during these challenging times while they were at home. Alisa, can you help?
Yeah, I'm not sure if I can play the video. Do I just click on the
Yeah,
screen?
you just click on the slide, on slide 6.
Nope. Sorry.
No, okay. Okay, maybe we can share it at another time.
Sorry, slide 6. Maybe I'm on the wrong one.
Yeah.
Oh, I see it. I apologize. Is that okay?
Yeah. Thank you.
sorry. I think I
Yeah,
got
it's okay. We can go on in the last slide. Thank you. So basically, what we are presenting here today, all this process of engaging directly through WhatsApp with parents and providing some lessons of the Stay-at-Home Family Challenge, we would love it to have it in an app format developed. In order to engage more communities, we try to we reach nearly 800 people during this time with the parents and the communities that we work with. But if we would have an app with accessibility features, like we did with the podcasts, it would be something that it would be a great opportunity for us. We would love to involve possibly corporates and businesses throughout the process of how we engage families and how we envision it, in order for them to not only respond to their corporate responsibility, but also to help families in need, especially in those communities who are both affected by the earthquake and the pandemic, who are really struggling in this period of time. Well, the other product that I wanted to share, Alisa, in the last slide, please, is that we, during this period of time, as I mentioned, the earthquake and the pandemic, we developed two publications, a children's book addressing the social-emotional aspects of children. And here also having children with disabilities, especially those who have more emotional or development challenges compared to their peers. So we would like to have these accessible books for children with disabilities in Albania. I know that for many of you, you can say that audiobooks are nothing new, but trust me, we do not have stuff like that here in Albania. So we would like to have the books produced in audio format and also narrated in sign language, Albanian sign language format, as we have a wide community of children with hearing impairment with us here. So basically, these were the two ideas that I wanted to share with you. If you have any questions, me, myself, my colleague Edward and Alisa are here to support you. Thank you for the patience.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Brisida and Alisa. That was such a wonderful presentation. Alisa, if I may ask, if you could please mute yourself. We're getting a little bit of feedback, I think, from your end. If you're able to just click the little microphone button at the bottom of your screen to mute yourself.
I did. I was afraid to touch anything during the middle.
No worries. Thank you so much. Family and parent engagement is just so important always for children with disabilities, and especially right now when so many families are quarantining at home. And so Brisida, the Stay-at-Home Family Challenge sounds like just such a creative and fun way to keep people engaged. I wonder if you've received feedback from your families on, is there any specific activity in that challenge that people really enjoy and get excited about? I know the curriculum must have several different activities, but is there one that you can...
Yeah, you can see a short glimpse of the video with the best practices. But the main things that were enjoyed by the families is the period of children spending with their dads, because here in Albania we have quite a strong patriarchal community where dads usually are the providers, not the caregivers. So engaging dads in this challenge was something that families were highlighting. Children supporting their families in doing a little bit of housework, involving and taking some responsibilities. So these were some of the feedback that we were receiving, despite the lots of challenges that, you know, for everyone the pandemic created.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing that example from the curriculum. Great. So I'm noting questions are coming in the chat box. We are tracking those questions and we'll get to them during the Q&A session. Please keep them coming. But for now, let's turn to our final presentation, which is with Leslie Farr Knox, the Senior Director of Engagement and Experience at the American Printing House. And Leslie will be presenting about Code Jumper, an accessible coding kit designed to open the world of coding to every student. Code Jumper is the result of a partnership between the American Printing House for the Blind and Microsoft. The technology enables young learners to create code by physically connecting pods and setting parameter values. The app is accessible for students with blindness who need to use screen reading software and for students with low vision who have unique layout needs. Students without vision disabilities can benefit from using Code Jumper, which helps teachers address the diverse needs of all students. So with that, let me now turn it over to Leslie. Leslie, over to you.
Thank you so much. And I was having trouble with my screen share, but are you able to see that now?
I can see it. Thank you so much.
Excellent. Changing browsers work. Thank you. Good morning. It's a pleasure to be with everyone. As Lee said, I'm Leslie Knox, and I am with the American Printing House for the Blind in Louisville, Kentucky. And I'm here to talk to you this morning about Code Jumper, which is a physical programming language that was developed to teach basic computer programming concepts to students that are age 7 to 11. Code Jumper, which you see on the screen in front of you, is a series of pods that connect through Bluetooth to an app. It was designed originally by Microsoft researchers in Cambridge, UK. It was actually a passion project of one of those researchers that had a son who was born blind. And she realized that a lot of the coding tools that he would be asked to use would not be accessible to him. So it was designed by Microsoft, and the American Printing House stepped in a couple of years ago to further develop Code Jumper and bring it to market, which we did this last January. So why Code Jumper? Well, as many of you know, computer science related jobs are really expected to grow more quickly than a lot of other industries over the next coming years. But at the same time, we're seeing fewer than 3% of undergraduates coming out of college with degrees or coming out of technical schools with degrees in computer programming, at least in the US. When you look at the STEM field as a whole and consider people with disabilities, only 2% of the people working in STEM careers have a disability of some kind. So when you look at children that are blind or visually impaired, it's important that they learn coding skills. It's going to be a part of their life moving forward. It also opens them to careers in coding that would otherwise be closed to them. And even if a student is not interested in the computer sciences, learning the basics of coding and computational thinking are important because that encompasses problem solving, debugging, sequencing, figuring out different alternatives, all those kinds of skills that are really important to children regardless of what they choose to do when they get older. So how does Code Jumper work? You may be familiar with programs like Scratch or Blockly or Microbit. Those all work, use physical representations on a screen. You drag together a sequence of code and it causes an animation or something to happen. But again, that's all visual. So a child that is blind or has a visual impairment is not going to be able to participate in that kind of classroom activity with their children. But with Code Jumper, we have taken the principles of block coding and we pretty much put them on the table in front of you. So this slide shows a Code Jumper kit. It has a hub and a number of different pods that are all different colors and have different kinds of dials on them that perform different functions. There are pods that play sounds. There are pods that insert a pause. There are pods that will allow you to do a loop. There are pods that will do an if-then scenario. There are constant and variable plugs. So really everything that you can do with some of those other programming languages, you can do with Code Jumper. It's just accessible to all children. And I can tell you from being in classrooms that are inclusive, that have sighted and children that are not sighted, you put this on a table in front of children and they're going to want to get their hands on it and play with it. We had one teacher describe it as addictive, which it is a little bit. The nice thing with Code Jumper is as you connect these pods and change the dials, you have a number of sounds to choose from. So you can sing a song, you can tell a story. You can tell a joke. You can also upload your own custom sounds. So children that want to maybe listen to a different song or tell a different story can do all of that. It's pretty easy. Because we know a lot of individuals who may want to bring this concept of coding to children may not have a background in computer science themselves, we have developed a pretty robust curriculum for CodeJumper, and that is all available at codejumper.com. So we have 19 lessons that go from very basic topics from what is a computer system to how do I create a loop, to more complex topics like topographies, binary numbers, nested loops, and things like that. We have tutorial videos that can be used by students or by the instructor to learn more about the CodeJumper components. We have assessments and evaluation tools you can use. And then because we are a partner with Microsoft, on the Microsoft Educator Community, or the MEC, there is a course developed specifically for people that may want to teach CodeJumper that give them a little more information and some other resources. I want to dig into one of the lessons, and I'm hoping this will work. Can you see my screen when I do that? Can you? Perfect. So this is actually one of the CodeJumper lessons you will see out on codejumper.com, and I just want to walk through it. Also want to let everyone know that while CodeJumper is available in English now, we are in the process of translating into a number of different European languages, and our goal is really to launch this internationally, translated into many languages over the next few years. So all of the curriculum, the app, everything will be translated. So you'll see every lesson has objectives and outcomes. It gives you any resources you need, links to those tutorial videos I mentioned, links to any code cards or supplies that you need. It defines the vocabulary that you'll be introducing. And then each lesson follows this type of flow. There is an unplugged activity where students walk through an activity that's all outlined for you here without a computer to understand what a thread means when you're talking about coding. Then they do a hands-on guided activity with CodeJumper where they practice that same type of activity. And you can see if there are any sequences you're asked to put together in CodeJumper, you have the visual representation of what the app and the sequence itself should look like with the pods. There's time for kids to do exploration on their own. And again, more complex sequences all spelled out for whoever is leading it. And then at the end, we go through how you can check for understanding, how you can close out that activity. And like I mentioned, here are all those other supplies that you need to do this lesson. So CodeJumper is a pretty inclusive tool and something that we've made pretty easy for folks to teach. Let me just wrap up by saying CodeJumper in a virtual world has been a little bit of a challenge because this is absolutely a collaborative hands-on tool. We launched it in January of this year, so we had 2 months of believing we'd be moving forward with our launch before COVID hit us. So we're working now on teaching teachers how they can teach CodeJumper remotely. And one way to do some of those initial concepts is through those unplugged lessons, because that's something a child can do with things that they can find at home. So we're looking for those solutions on how we move forward in this new normal that we're all facing. But we know that this is a great inclusive tool that any child that's interested in learning coding can use. And so we just invite you to learn more by going to codejumper.com. And I'll be glad to answer any questions in the chat once we're at that point.
Leslie, thank you so much.
My pleasure.
I would love to get my hands on a CodeJumper to play around with. I see you picked up on a comment that was in the chat box from Christopher Harris. He wrote, "Love the unplugged introductions. This might not be as critical for student learning, but it makes a huge difference for teacher confidence as they introduce lessons." I could imagine the same would be true with parents and caregivers at home working with your child and being able to really understand how does coding work through these unplugged introductions. That sounds really great.
That's true. And I have to say, as an adult, when I was told I was going to be the Code Jumper project leader, my background is marketing, communications, and public relations. I was a little concerned because I did not learn coding in school. But you sit down and play with this, and it's really intuitive. I have to give Microsoft all the credit for putting together an amazing course. And I will say they did this with the feedback of what they called the Young Designers Institute, 5 visually impaired children who helped them determine what Code Jumper should look like, what it should feel like, how it should work. And so I think taking the lead from the kids really made a difference with this product.
Absolutely. I see too that Anne has posted a question in the chat box asking if you could share the age group that the app targets, and you've responded.
Yeah, but I will say, so 7 to 11 is the target, but one of the best experiences I had was with a group of kindergartners, 5-year-olds that took to this like crazy. And then I was with a high school class, and this was a group of kids that were blind and visually impaired. They had not really had that introduction to code with their classmates earlier, and they loved it. Now they immediately created their own custom sounds, which you can do. There were burps and things like that boys like to do, but they created their own custom sounds to tell their own kind of stories. So while 7 to 11 is kind of the sweet spot, really kids younger and older, we've also used this with children on the autism spectrum and children with different physical disabilities. And we're surprised that all of them were able to interact in some way with Code Jumper.
That's too funny about some of the boys wanting to have customized sounds that sound like burping.
Yes.
Yes. Anne also has a question here asking, is it available in languages other than English?
So right now we have launched it in English. We are in the process of doing the French-Canadian translation and several translations into European languages. We have a 3-year plan to roll it out internationally. So we will be launching it in many different languages, but look for European languages, French, German, Spanish, Portuguese, Italian, as well as some South American languages later this year, first of next year.
Wonderful. And again, let me just put in the chat box the link to the session webpage, which includes all of our presenters' videos. And I'd really encourage people to take a look at those videos. They include the automatic YouTube captioning, so they're accessible. And what I enjoy most about the videos is really seeing the children who are in the videos and the joy and excitement on their faces as they're interacting with all of these different technologies that have been presented to us today. So please enjoy those videos. Let's now move into our roundtable discussion. We're doing really well on time, and I think that we can really have a robust discussion. Again, thank you to all of our presenters for taking the time to be here and for sharing the really exciting and innovative work that you have been working on. During this roundtable discussion, we'll be able to open it up for more questions and discussion from those of you who are tuning in from all over the world. So keep those questions coming via the chat box. You can also, at this time, if you prefer to ask your questions directly, you can do so by clicking the top right-hand corner of your screen. You should see a blue button that says Ask to Share Audio and Visuals. And if you click on that button, Nicole or Michael will be able to put you in one by one so that you can ask your question directly. So you have that opportunity, or if you just want to type in the chat box, that is perfectly okay to do as well. And so while we're waiting on your questions to come in, let me go ahead and ask a few questions. And Leslie, you touched on this a little bit in your presentation, but my question for all of you is about the process that you use to design your innovation. And with that process, I'm wondering, how did you engage the end user? So how did you engage persons with disabilities in the design of your innovation? And what did you learn from that process of engagement with people with disabilities? So if we can maybe start, we'll go back in the order in which we presented. So we'll hop back to Jesper. Jesper, if if you would like to share any of your insights and experiences in working directly with persons with disabilities in the design of GraphoGame, we would love to hear from you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for the question. You know, we, you know, as a game development company, we took a direct focus on, you know, dyslexic children, but then the wider classroom. You know, in this room right now, we have people talking about, you know, genuine inclusive education, including, you know, deaf children and sign language, etc. You know, I will admit, GraphoGame is not up to that standard of inclusivity. However, to get back to that question of how did we design GraphoGame, actually, there's a picture I showed in the presentation of the child playing next to one of the researchers. And it was the first versions of GraphoGame were created with the child playing the minimum viable product and realizing through heat map sort of analysis of how they play the game, we understood common places where they lose interest, or where they common places where they just get frustrated because they don't get it. And what our key takeaways from that really was, number one, dyslexic children should not be using different tools to other children in the classroom. That was one thing, is that, you know, when you have a classroom of 20 children and 2 of them get to use this special product while 18 don't, in our view, one of the greatest or worst effects of dyslexia to a student is not the effect on their learning necessarily, but the social exclusion that starts occurring early on. And that we notice, so these games need to be given to everyone in the classroom equally, so that they don't feel that they're somehow excluded. And that is our form of including. And then, yeah, so I think that was probably a key takeaway, was that the it's not disability, but learning difference in this case has more of a social and psychological effect than directly relating to their ability to learn. So that was probably our first or most important takeaway.
Thank you. Chris, Stephen, is there anything that you would like to add about how you worked with deaf and hard of hearing communities in designing the world around us?
I think Chris can say a lot about how we work with our first kind of usability test and story creation workshop.
Well, really, we prioritize the deaf community in inputting their feedback in our development phase. Obviously, while we were researching and developing this, we wanted to make it more accessible for deaf readers because they are exposed to 2 different languages, sign plus written English, or their specific written language. That causes some misunderstandings in a classroom on occasion. So we wanted to provide a product that provided a bilingual educational experience that people can benefit from both at the same time. For example, if someone uses sign language with captions underneath and they include that in their video, that is a bilingual experience. And so the brain then is able to catch both languages and both modes of access at the same time. And so often if one of those is missing, information is lost. And so we decided to provide both in our product. And so again, it provides a different and very unique educational experience. We provide videos as well as text to support learning. And so it's really important for us that the readers are able to visually access information as well as connect it to their native written language and compare and contrast between those and be able to access both at the same time. Again, Stephen and I, strongly involve the deaf community in our research to observe and provide feedback in its development. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. And if I can ask a question, and I think if a few people may have noted this in the chat box, but recognition that sign languages are distinct and different around the world. So different countries have their own sign languages. I'm wondering, with the application that you have developed, understanding that it is available in multiple languages. Is there any advice that you can share about working with local deaf communities?
That is a great question, right? Sign language varies depending on the country, and sign language is not a universal language, contrary to popular thought. So we are very concerned about, obviously, focusing on American Sign Language here, focusing on American and English resources, but also opening up that to international communities and including their languages and really making it a worldwide deaf experience, and honoring each country's language. So it's not only each country has one sign language, but there are regional differences within those countries. So we might have 4 to 5 different variations of sign language or languages or accents per se within one country. And so we are trying to focus on those. Maybe a northern region of a country has one specific sign language or sign that they use for a specific word or idiom, where the southern region of that country might use different signs. And so we're trying to, again, involve the deaf communities from all over the world in our research and development while working on World Around You. And again, really, the sign languages are very different, focusing on dialects, meeting with people from different towns, villages, and learning their sign languages so that we have an accurate representation. So for example, there is a difference even in America with Black ASL versus the ASL that people who identify as white may use. And so those regional differences, we try not to assume, but really research. And so we do a lot of double checking per se on our research to make sure that we are aligning what we are producing with what the community actually uses.
Sign languages are living languages just like any other language, and they grow around the population, they grow around the region. So even in a place like the US, not just Black ASL, but even regional signs, regional languages, regional slang pop up. And then again, in places like India and the Philippines, where you already have hundreds of dialects of spoken languages, you have a similar diversity in sign language.
Great, thank you so much for sharing that with us, Chris and Stephen. Brisida, if there's anything that you would like to add from World Vision's experience in Albania in working with families of children with disabilities.
Yeah, first I would like to add something. 2 years ago, we conducted the first prevalence study to understand the disability prevalence among children in Albania. So we know that now we have 10.4% of children with disabilities living in Albania, 92% of which do not have access to specialized services. So this whole data streamed and was included trying to shape our existing programming of inclusive education. In specific to the 2 products that I presented, we are in the phase that we are training teachers and school psychologists for the 2 books that we produced regarding COVID-19 and the earthquake response, in order for them to use them in mainstream schools, where we have nearly 160 children with disabilities enrolled. So we will see along the way how they are adapted. And for this reason is that we presented the idea that we would like to have the audiobooks and also the books version narrated in sign language, as well as the stay-at-home family challenge to engage with parents who have children with disabilities at home, because it needs adaptation, means easy reading language. It might need special videos narrated in the app features who are narrated in Albanian Sign Language. And I agree with the previous conversation that sometimes it is difficult to adopt these things as we have the Albanian Sign Language here in our country. So this is the way that how we included and envisioned to continue with our work.
Great, thank you so much. I see some questions coming in. Leslie, I may turn to you. There are a couple of questions. One specifically for you that asks, do you have any advice to share on how to take education material to market? So I'll let you opine on that question for a moment. I also want to throw out another question that came in for everybody in the group. So if we have time, we'll ask everybody to also respond to this question. And the question is, do you have suggestions for assessing the effectiveness of education material? So Leslie, we'll start with you, that first question,
Okay.
and then we'll turn back to the whole group, the question about assessing effectiveness of the education material.
Yeah, I think, my first suggestion would be do not do it 2 months before a major global pandemic, because that has been the hardest thing about Code Jumper. But, I think for the American Printing House for the Blind, some of you may not be familiar with us. We have been around 162 years, and we are kind of tasked by the Department of Education in the United States for building adaptive education material for students that are blind or visually impaired. And so our educational marketing is really usually to those customers in the US that we have interacted with for all those years. But Code Jumper is different because we had to market it internationally. And so for us, we selected a partner to work with. We picked a partner that had worked in assistive technology to help us take this out into those parts of the world that we're not familiar with working. But I think the big thing is we have guidelines that really we follow when we're evaluating educational material that help us choose the products that are going to be best use and make a biggest impact in the lives of the children that we serve. And then just focus on the benefits to those children. We do field testing. And so getting feedback from those teachers and the students that were part of the field test is a huge part of our launch, because just like everything else, folks want to know how somebody else what experience somebody else has had with this product. And so I think based on the guidelines that we follow from the Department of Education and just the experience we have, that's helped us. But I do think in a case like Code Jumper, partnering with Microsoft, partnering with an assistive technology company like Humanware that has worked in that international market is what really made the difference for us in taking this product out globally.
Thank you, Leslie.
Sure.
Maria asked a question for Jesper as well as everybody else, all of our other presenters. And so Jesper, if we can maybe start with you and also open it up to others who may have thoughts to share. The question is, do you have any suggestions for assessing the effectiveness of education material?
I'll just start off. I mean, that's a great question, and also one that gets me nervous because I'm actually I don't come from a background of teaching, so I'm not the best person to ask, but I will share my perspective from an education game development point of view, which is that with learning games, you're not only assessing the effectiveness of the content in the game, you also have to understand how effective is the game at engaging children, and are they going to come back in 2 months? I get bored of a computer game in a week, so let alone a literacy game. So what we believe it is you should do is, with a learning game specifically, is to combine your pilot or randomized controlled trial, where you basically have a control group and a small intervention group using GraphoGame. You test it based on your whatever curriculum you're using, so you get the quantitative data that teachers and decision makers need. However, student ratings are so important at the beginning and end of these trials. At the beginning, you ask the children if they like the game, or do they think it's boring, what part they like the most, what don't they understand, and then ask the same questions at the end of the intervention. And you can sometimes really shed a light on how quickly they got bored of the game. And by the end of the pilot, you're going to be excited. You see good results. You buy the solution for your home school or whatever, and then those kids are just not engaging with it. So sometimes great content delivered badly was not going to deliver the content for children, and sometimes okay content delivered well can be more effective in some contexts. So I think, color in your quantitative data with a bit of qualitative data from student surveys.
Thank you so much. Is there anything that anybody else wants to add on that question about suggestions for assessing effectiveness of education material?
Just adding a little bit in the end, both the products that I mentioned here are more focused on the psychosocial support of children with disabilities. But talking about measuring learning outcomes, I think this is a huge challenge for everyone involved in that. And we know that children develop at their own specific timing and progress, and there are several factors regarding measuring their learning outcomes. So what we would love to have these features tested in the products while we try to finalize them. But our learning experience with our existing program has taught us that we need to set specific objectives and measure them progressively, depending on the level of challenges that cause them, having appropriate tools, measures, and using tools like the ICF and adapting them to the learning needs and the environment.
Thank you so much, Brisida. We are just at time. This has been such a wonderful and very interesting and exciting session. I want to thank all of our session presenters, Brisida, Alisa, and the team from World Vision, Jesper, Leslie, Stephen, and Chris. Thank you all so much. Thanks to everybody who joined. Thank you very much to the Education Alliance who organized this session, and to Nicole and Michael for keeping us online and functioning in this technical platform.